Hi, I'm Douglas Spencer with Spencer Brenneman, and we are returning to our branding banter. And I'm really excited to invite a dear friend and colleague, John Basile, to join us for this one. And we are going to be talking about diversity and your brand because June is LGBT Pride Month. And that seems to us like a great way to connect the two. So, John, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Doug. I'm thrilled to be with you today and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, great. All right. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Just give us your professional history and what you're up to now.
Okay, sounds good. So, as you know, I spent the last 32 years at Fidelity Investments. My career has been mostly in human resources. The last 8 years of that 32 years, I spent as the global head of diversity and inclusion, which was probably the most rewarding role I've had at the firm in all those many years. I recently retired at the end of last year. And since that time, I've been doing some consulting work around diversity and inclusion, some executive coaching, some public speaking, some meeting facilitation, but really focusing on trying to help organizations be more effective and be more successful in implementing their diversity and inclusion plans and strategies. So that's been really fun to sort of switch off from the corporate side and moving into more of a consulting role.
That's great. That's great. So, how was that transition from a traditional HR role into one that's focused exclusively on diversity?
Well, it probably was a little scary at the time. Now, at the time, I had already about 25 years at Fidelity. And when they approached me about doing this role, no one else had been in the role prior to me. And I also knew at the time there was still a little skepticism about what we really wanted to do in this space and what it meant to the organization and why it was this important. And so I was going into it with a little reticence, thinking, well, let me do the best I can with this based on the fact that I've built up a fairly good reputation in the firm. And I knew a lot of the senior leadership team already. And I knew that they trusted me to do this in the right way. So, I said, let's just try this. Let's try to get something going, because I felt like at the time we were pretty far behind a lot of our competitors in actually focusing on this work. So it was a little bit of a challenging transition. I had also gone from a role where I was managing about 30 employees on the recruitment side to an individual contributor role, thinking, wow, how am I going to do this all on my own? But fortunately for me, I had some great allies and advocates across the firm who were as passionate about this work as I was, and we were able to create a really good sort of working team around D&I, so we could sort of help each other in the various sites and locations and businesses that we were in. So I had hands on the ground to be able to help do some of this work. So that made the transition a little bit easier, that I wasn't in it all by myself.
That's great. That's great. Before we get into the real meat, I'm just going to throw something out there that there's probably a lot of people thinking right now, and that is, what are two white guys doing talking about diversity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Believe me, I've had that asked to me several times, and I'll tell you the context to where I had it asked to me the first time. One of the first things that we did at Fidelity on the diversity and inclusion front was to formalize and develop our employee resource groups. And I can talk a little bit more about Fidelity Pride in a bit. But we had 5 ERGs, employee resource groups. There was a women's leadership group, the LGBTQ group, a Black and Latino group, an Asian employee resource group, and a veterans group. Those are our 5 that we launched initially. And I really needed executive leadership to sponsor these. And so I went to the C-suite executives in the firm. Consequently, they were all white men. And I was able to get 5 of them who were really focused on helping these efforts and were really passionate about the work, to assume these executive sponsorship roles for these employee resource groups. And one of the first criticisms I got when we launched it, gee, John, how come all the employee resource groups have white men running them? And I thought, okay, I get it. And but the reality for me was, these are the men that are running the firm right now. These are the leaders of the organization. We need them to be the ones that drive this change, because they're in the power seats. And so it made sense to me. And once I explained it to folks, they're like, yeah, you're right. If we can't get them on board with this, and we can't get them advocating and driving this work, we're never going to make change. So, initially that was what we did, and it worked quite successfully for us because it gave these senior leaders an opportunity to really advocate for the work, and they were in the seats of influence, and consequently we were able to make really good change in a rather quickly. I mean, not too quickly, but quick enough that we could start to see some really good results. But if we didn't have their support, we never would have been able to make those changes as we did. The other thing I would say is, as a white man, also as an openly gay man, there have been many times where I was the one and only in the room. And those kinds of experiences sensitize you a little bit to what it's like to not have a voice, or not feel like you're valued, or that your contributions matter. And I know many of my friends who are Black or Latino or Asian or have disabilities, they will all say the same thing. We all come at it from the same perspective because we have been in those situations where we were that one and only person in the room, and everyone else was then the majority. So I think that's where we have the ability to sort of have that understanding of what it's like to be different, and what it's like to maybe not feel like you truly belong in that situation.
It really is an experience that has probably too much universality to it. We're part of life, I guess, and as long as we keep moving on and keep improving, that's the thing to focus on. So let's dive into it. So can you give us some examples about how a commitment to diversity has impacted a brand's reputation, whether that's Fidelity or any other organization you're familiar with or companies you work with?
I mean, that's a really good question. I found a little bit of research, if you'll indulge me while I look it up for a second, because PricewaterhouseCoopers did a really good analysis on the LGBTQ landscape in terms of why it's important for businesses to support LGBT inclusion. And they found that 78% of LGBT people and their friends, family, and relatives would switch brands that are known to be LGBT friendly. And that's Community Marketing and Insights did that. So, I think this as well as I do, because you've been in this business for a lot longer, communications and marketing side longer than I have been. But, the LGBTQ community is incredibly loyal, and they want to support organizations who support them. So I think just knowing that many people would switch brands, I think is something that businesses should pay attention to when they're thinking about how they want to market their products and services. Mm-hmm. And so for us, one of the things that we realized probably about maybe 5 or so years ago was that our LGBTQ customers were feeling a little underserved by the firm. And this was at a time before gay marriage was legal in the US. So every state had a different way of treating same-sex couples. There was domestic partner benefits, civil unions, there were different tax laws around these kinds of things. And so oftentimes we'd hear from our employees in the field working in our branch offices, geez, we have LGBT customers, and oftentimes we don't know what we can and cannot do with them, in terms of what status they're in and what state they're in. So our Fidelity Pride, one of those ERGs that I had mentioned, our employee resource groups, took this assignment and they said, well, why don't we go out, we'll do some benchmarking, we'll do some competitive research, we'll talk to some of our customers, we'll find out what's really going on. And they came back and presented to our heads of marketing in each of our businesses a very compelling business case for why we needed to sort of, look at this segment of our market that we've kind of overlooked for quite some time. And the numbers were staggering in terms of what money we were leaving on the table, what opportunities were out there that we were missing, and recognizing the fact that there's still a large percentage of our customers that we're not able to identify but are probably LGBT, right? Already. So how can we sort of tap into this and really help this particular segment get the kind of support and service from Fidelity that we know they deserve? So it was great. The proposal that they came back to us was very, very robust and compelling. And two of our marketing heads, one on the retail side and one on the workplace investing side, said they wanted to pick it up. The retail one really took it to a great level. They did a whole marketing strategy around it. They created videos, had a web presence. They did a lot of articles about the importance of focusing on the LGBT customer. And we actually started to see some assets come in because of it. So I think, we knew that there was a need out there, but we needed some help to try to help. We needed some help to sort of frame it And I think the LGBTQ ERG Fidelity Pride really helped us do that, and which is an example of how an employee resource group can actually help make an impact for your business, right? They saw the opportunity, they created the business case, and they actually helped in implementing it as well. So I think that's an example of how you're. And then when we talk to some customers who sort of participated in the program, they were like, "This was amazing that you guys felt it was important enough to focus on us as a segment," and they felt that they were in much better position to talk to their friends and colleagues who are also LGBTQ, and sort of bring them to Fidelity and say, "Hey, we're really focused on this. You should give Fidelity a chance." So it's very, very important for us in terms of having that positive brand in the marketplace.
Cool. That's great. That's great. Well, let's flip it around though. Have you seen examples of where a brand strategy has impacted how a company approaches diversity, or how the brand strategy has driven a commitment to diversity?
Let's see. Well, I would actually say that we saw that a lot in also at Fidelity, from the women's investing perspective. So, women investors have always been a very large part of our strategy, because we know that most women, we have about 48% of women customers right now, and that has grown tremendously in the last 10 years. And what's happening more and more is women are outliving their husbands. And so they're the ones that are making more and more of the financial decisions later in life. So that was a marketing strategy for us. A marketing and brand strategy was to really focus on women investors. And so out of that, our women's leadership group, which was a very good employee resource group, also took on some of that work. They took it upon themselves to go out and do some focus groups, get more information, talk to women within Fidelity about their perspectives on this product and service that we were offering, and actually helped enhance the marketing strategy by some of the work that they did. So that's an example of sort of the marketing segment strategy sort of out there and working already. And then our women's leadership group, which is one of our biggest employee resource groups, picking up on that and actually doing some work within the organization to try to help it be more successful and to sustain it. And they did a really good job, and we got a lot of credit by the heads of marketing that we really helped them get additional information and helped them frame it in a little bit of a different way as they continue to make progress based on from the information that this women's leadership group was able to gather for them.
Great. I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask a question about, and maybe not put you on the spot, but you made a reference about early on, there was only white men in the senior leadership positions at Fidelity at the time, and they're certainly not alone. There's many organizations like that. How long before you think, and I know there's a big push in California, for example, they've legislated that boards have to have a certain percentage of female participants. How long do you think before the consumer bases are going to come to the point where they expect and demand more diversity at the most senior levels? And also, what about companies? Because obviously it's it's very clear based on what you've shared with us already that businesses do better when they have a more diverse more diverse approach to doing business. So how long before this we'll see some real change?
I think one of the things that I think a lot of people get frustrated with when you talk about diversity and inclusion is sometimes the pace of change is a little slow. And so, I've often said to leaders, they'll say to me, well, how come, we're doing all this work, we've got all these efforts underway, and why isn't it happening faster? And, it takes time to change culture, to change organizations, and to completely turn yourself around. A lot of the work that we did in the early days, actually most of the work that I did while I was in that role, was really focused internally on our culture, creating a culture where it was much more inclusive, where leaders knew how to be better inclusive leaders, and they were building more diverse teams. It took time to get folks comfortable with that because they were so used to doing things a certain way, and that was the comfortable way for them. And as you start to introduce the importance of diversity, the importance of being inclusive, and helping them gain the tools and resources to be a better manager in that perspective, it doesn't happen overnight. And I also think, if you're an LGBTQ person or a Black woman or an Asian man, you don't want to ever be seen on the as the candidate that got hired because they had to check a box. You know, because once you're tokenized, you're never going to feel like you're valued, you're respected, or that you were the best person for the job. And I think that's the stuff you got to be careful of, is that you always want to hire the best person, but you want to make the pool of talent that's available to you as diverse as you can be with qualified people. And that's how you're going to move the needle.
Great. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate your time so much, and I respect the time of people watching us. So it's probably time that we wrapped up. So any parting suggestions you have for HR, diversity, or even branding folks around diversity?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the spirit of being, coming up on Pride Month, I would maybe call out to our LGBTQ listeners and everybody for that matter, be your true authentic selves in work. Try to be open and authentic, and tell your story. Everybody has a diversity story, whether you're LGBTQ or a straight white man. Everyone has a story and a connection to diversity. And just be comfortable sharing that so people get to know you, because that's the only way you make progress in this field, is by people getting to know each other and respecting them and understanding where we're different and where we're similar. So be open, be authentic, be yourselves, and make sure you share your story. And happy Pride.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I mean, it just makes life so much better, and actually easier in many respects. And our brand promise here at Spencer Brenneman is to bring the rewards of articulating and bringing your true self to organizations and individuals alike. So it syncs up right with Pride. John, thanks so much. How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Probably my LinkedIn profile would be the best place. Hit me up there and I'd be happy to have a conversation or answer any questions you have.
Great. Thanks so much. Everyone, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. And for everyone out there, because it's for everyone, happy Pride. Thanks, everybody.